There is a voice in your head that never stops talking. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, it is there, commenting, judging, narrating every move you make, every mistake you have ever made, every interaction you replay late at night, wondering if you said the wrong thing or came across the wrong way. That voice is with you more than any person in your life has ever been, more than your closest friend, more than anyone who has ever loved you. And for most people, that voice is not kind. It calls you stupid when you make a mistake. It tells you that you are not enough when you look in the mirror. It reminds you of every failure at exactly the moment you need confidence the most. It speaks to you in ways that if anyone else said those things out loud, you would cut them out of your life immediately. But because the voice is yours, because it lives inside you, you have accepted it. You have normalized it. You have let it run without ever questioning whether it has to sound the way it does. If you are exhausted from carrying that voice, if you have spent years feeling like you are your own harshest critic, your own worst enemy, the one person who never lets you off the hook even when everyone else has forgiven you, I want you to know something before we go any further. That exhaustion is real. What you have been carrying is heavy, and the fact that you are still here, still trying, still searching for a way to quiet that voice, that says something powerful about who you actually are underneath all of it. Because here is the truth. The voice in your head is not the truth. It is not who you really are. It is a pattern. A learned pattern that science can now explain clearly. And patterns can be changed, deliberately, permanently, starting today. Welcome to the King's Codex lesson. 1. Why your brain talks to you like an enemy. Before we talk about how to change the inner voice, we need to understand why it sounds the way it does. Because this is not weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is neuroscience. The brain's primary job, the job it has been doing since before any of us were born, is to keep us alive, not to make us happy, not to make us confident, to keep us alive. And one of the ways it does this is by scanning constantly for threats, mistakes, and potential dangers. Psychologists call this the negativity bias, the brain's built-in tendency to weight negative information, negative experiences, and negative self-assessments far more heavily than positive ones. Research by neuroscientist Rick Hansen found that the brain processes negative experiences like Velcro. They stick immediately and deeply. But positive experiences are processed like Teflon. They slide off unless deliberate effort is made to hold them. This means the brain is wired to remember every failure more vividly than every success, every flaw more vividly than every strength. On top of this, the inner voice most people carry today was largely formed in childhood. Every critical thing a parent, teacher, or peer once said became internalized over time. The critic in the head is rarely original. It is often a collection of other people's worst moments, replayed on a loop, presented as truth. Lesson 2. What happens when the voice stays cruel? This is not just psychological. The way a person talks to themselves has measurable physical consequences, and the science is sobering. Research from Kyoto University found that chronic negative self-talk activates the brain's threat response system, the same system that fires during physical danger. Cortisol stays elevated. The immune system is suppressed. The prefrontal cortex becomes less active because the brain is too busy managing the perceived threat. The result is that harsh self-talk does not just feel bad. It makes a person think worse. It narrows perception, reduces problem-solving ability, and increases reactivity while decreasing strategic thinking. Every cruel inner statement makes someone less capable of performing at the level they are actually capable of. Studies from the University of Michigan found that people who used Distanced self-talk, referring to themselves in the third person rather than I, showed significantly lower stress levels and performed better under pressure. That distance shifts the brain from a defensive state into a calmer, more strategic one. That is exactly the shift we are going to build. From judge to king, now let this sink in. Because what you are about to hear is not just information. It is an invitation. An invitation to govern yourself the way history's greatest minds governed their kingdoms. With clarity, with strength, and without the cruelty you have been mistaking for discipline. Lesson 3. How a king talks to himself. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be his own most trusted counselor, not his harshest critic, his counselor. The counselor does not pretend failures do not exist. He examines them clearly, draws the lesson and moves forward. He does not dwell. He does not punish. He strategizes. This is the difference between the inner voice of a king and the inner voice of someone defeated before they begin. The defeated voice says, "I am so stupid. I cannot believe I did that." The king's voice says, "That was a mistake. What happened and what is the next move?" The defeated voice says, "I am not good enough and never will be." The king's voice says, "Progress is not finished yet. Here is the next step." The defeated voice says, "Everyone saw how nervous I was, and now they think I am weak." The king's voice says that interaction did not go the way it was intended. Preparation and approach can both be sharpened. The shift is not delusion. It is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. Kings see reality clearly, more clearly than anyone, because they cannot afford not to. The difference is, they respond to reality with strategy rather than shame. They use what happened as information rather than as proof of unworthiness. Machiavelli was explicit about this. He wrote that the prince who punishes himself for every error commits the mistake twice. Once in the act and once in the suffering that follows it. The error already happened. The only question that matters is what comes next. You are not meant to carry shame like a chain around your ankle. You are meant to carry clarity like a crown. Lesson 4. The practice. How to actually retrain the inner voice. The first practice is catching the voice in real time. Most people let their inner critic run completely unchecked because they have never been taught to observe it. Starting today, every time the voice says something cruel, pause. Notice it, name it. There it is again. That thought is not a fact. It is a pattern. And it does not have to be believed. This act of observation creates distance between the self and the thought. Neuroscientists call this cognitive diffusion. The ability to watch a thought rather than be consumed by it. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that even brief, consistent practice of observing thoughts without identifying with them measurably reduces their emotional impact within days. The second practice is redirection through distance. When a cruel inner statement arrives, replace it immediately with language that sounds like advice rather than judgment. Not "I am a failure," but "this has been handled before and will be handled again." Not "I cannot do this, but solutions tend to be found." This is not empty affirmation. It is strategic self-coaching, and the science shows it works, because it activates the neural pathways associated with receiving guidance from a trusted mentor rather than the threat response triggered by self-attack. The third practice is the evening debrief, 2 minutes, spent asking 3 questions. What was handled well today? What would be done differently? What does tomorrow require? This replaces the brain's habit of replaying failure with a structured review that extracts the lesson and moves forward. The fourth practice is building an evidence file. The brain's negativity bias means it naturally collects evidence of failure and dismisses evidence of strength. Counter this deliberately. Keep a running record, anywhere, in any form, of moments handled well, problems solved, times showing up when it was hard. Read it when the voice grows loud, because the voice lies, and the evidence tells the truth. What to expect. In the first week, the cruel voice will still be loud, but it will start to be caught. That catching, that moment of awareness, is already a shift. No longer a passive listener to that voice, and observer of it. And observers hold power that listeners never do. By week 2, the catching happens faster. Redirection becomes more automatic. The cruel thought arrives, and almost immediately something rises to question it. Is this true? Is this useful? What would the king's voice say here? By week 4, the inner landscape begins to feel quieter. Not because the brain has stopped generating negative thoughts. It always will. But because those thoughts are no longer being amplified or obeyed without question. And in that quiet, something else becomes audible. The voice of someone who knows their worth. Someone who responds to difficulty with strategy instead of shame. Someone who governs their inner world with the same strength and clarity they bring to everything else. That voice was always there. It simply could not be heard over the noise of the other one. A king does not speak to himself like a peasant. He governs his inner world with discipline, clarity, and the unshakable knowledge of his own worth. That is not a metaphor. It is a daily practice, and it starts the next time that voice speaks. This is the King's Codex. See you in the next one.